I might read the poem early today, but here's my list. Cubby houses, billy carts, air guns, cracker night, marbles, schoolyard games, British bulldog, red rover, crossover, cocky laura, pick-up games of football at the bottom of the schoolyard, brandings, backyard cricket, fairground rides at the local shows, a job as a paper boy, helping the milkman, riding in the back of a ute to the football games, incinerators, old tyres used to as for swings down by the creek, inner tubes at the beach. They're all gone.
Riding in the back of a ute. I remember that well. We went to all our local footy games from town to town in the back of a ute, sometimes a station wagon, but you were unrestrained with about 5 or 6 other kids.
The whole team, you know, you just went there and played and then got back in the ute and the bloke dropped you home.
And in the country, you would be in that ute for probably 2 hours sometimes longer to get to the next town.
With a dog, usually.
Yeah, there was there was always a dog. And the dog would invariably be on the field during the game at some stage, making a cameo appearance.
So I've got to, and while I was on my hobby horse about all this, and let's have your calls. What do you remember? How was your non-OH&S childhood? And 2 things that I'm going to talk about, 2 iconic events that disappeared during COVID but probably wouldn't have made it anyway. The Australian Billy Cart Championship and the Australian Marbles Championship, they both no longer exist. And then I started thinking about kids and parents today, and one of my pet things, and I'm going to get in terrible trouble for this, but I think one of the things wrong with the whole setup with parents and kids today is that a lot of parents want to treat their kids as friends. They make friends of their children, you know, and they even, I know one particular woman whose daughter dates somebody I know, and she goes along with them when they go to the pub. And, you know,
maybe she's chaperoning Jim.
No, I don't think so. I think making friends with your kids. So I've written this. Anyway, here we go. We used to build a billy cart to give ourselves a thrill. All you needed was a quiet road, one that had a hill. Old pram wheels and wooden crate was all that it would take. Some timber and a few nails. You didn't need a brake. In the schoolyard we played brandings, footy or red rover, and skinned a knee occasionally when we tumbled over. The teachers kept their distance. They knew that we were tough, but they'd come and stop the game if it got too rough. For a swing we had a tyre tied with rope onto a tree, and we could roam the neighbourhood if we were home for tea. We had cricket games in summer down on the vacant lot, and took an inner tube down to the beach when it was hot. We didn't have the proper gear for all the games we played. For cricket, just an old cork ball and a bat some father made. The wicket was a wooden crate or our old garbage tin, until Mum saw the damage with the sides all dented in. We only had one football in our street till someone nicked it. It was out of shape and heavy, and your toe hurt when you kicked it. We played hopscotch on the footpath up and down the street. None of us wore hats or had shoes upon our feet. We got bruises, we got blisters, we had gravel rash as well. We got bindies, we got splinters, and removing them was hell. Some Dettol and a Band-Aid, and you were on your way. Don't sit there feeling sorry for yourself. Go out and play. I never felt entitled, and I never felt neglected. I knew teachers and other adults ought to be respected. I knew Sunday school was boring, but you just had to endure it. And I knew if I was sick, castor oil would probably cure it. That was back when parents didn't need to be a friend. They knew tough love and independence would be better in the end. Any mother in the street could chastise you or feed you, and you knew your parents loved you, but they didn't always need you. So,
gee, there's a lot of memories there, Jim.
Well, that's basically sort of my childhood.
Yes, I remember a lot of that.
And if anyone else, feels...
I had feet like leather.
Empathy to those things.
I don't think I wore shoes until I went to school.
Every photograph of me, I've got boxer shorts, no hat, no shirt.
Yeah.
no shoes, and I know I'm pretty good because I have a relatively, I shouldn't say this, my mother used to say about sunburn that, our skin wasn't too bad because we had a little bit of wogginess. We came from, she claimed it was French heritage, but I think she made that up. So my skin doesn't burn, which is just as well because all that damage that was done as a kid. But anyway,
I wish I could say the same.
All those things.
Lots of feedback on this. Just quickly, it came in very early, so I'll give it a run first because we've got calls as well. But Wayne sent a text saying, speaking of billy carts, I grew up in Dudley Street in Bondi. I had a billy cart that had truck wheel bearings for wheels, and man, it flew. I used to be flying down the hill and slide out around the corner, but old Mrs. Atwood, who ran the post office, complained to my mum, so my cart was confiscated. It got locked up in our neighbour's house. I was devastated. Thank you, Wayne. That would generate a few thoughts too, I think, for people in those circumstances.
Interesting, Dudley Street, because the hill at the back of Botany near Kellogg's was called Dudley Hill. There's a Dudley Street at now called Pagewood, because Botany used to take up a huge area of Sydney, but nobody wanted to be called Botany. So Rockdale, which used to be West Botany, became Rockdale, and Pagewood, which used to be East Botany, became Pagewood, and Mascot, which used to be North Botany, became Mascot. Anyway, Dudley Street was a ripper of a hill at the back, just near the railway line and over near Pagewood, and that was the Billy Cart Hill.
No one ever thought of brakes.
Now, it must be something about that name.
We've got some calls, which we'll get to before we go to our break. Mark's been on the line. G'day, Mark. What are your thoughts?
Oh, g'day, boys. How are we? No, look, I started as an apprentice carpenter late 70s, and in those days you didn't see any high-vis colours. The fluoro pinks, that would have got you bashed back in those days, but the oranges and the yellows that you see everywhere. So, look, much safer, and at least the crane driver or the bulldozer driver can see you now. But, yeah, look, it was in the days when Carl Barron, the comedian, who was a roof tiler, he said if he had 2 bricks to sit on for smoko, he was lucky.
Yeah. I only did roof tiling once. I managed to avoid it after that. It was a very tough job, yeah. And you were judged by the number of tiles you could carry on your shoulders. You went up on the ladder and onto the roof.
Yep.
And that was a very tough test. Thank you, Mark. Great memories, mate. Thank you very much. Frank's on the line with more memories, this time the old billy carts. G'day, Frank.
How you going, mate? Look, yeah, we used to get those really small ball bearing wheels.
Yes, we had those.
And I tell you what, I got in trouble because I cut up a bed to make the billy cart. But yeah, we used to, and then we could do 360s. Yeah, mate, it was great.
But those ball bearing wheels, if they sort of stuck, they made a mess of the pavement, didn't they? Remember, if they used to jam and then you'd gouge a great hole in the.
We'd scrape ourselves a few times.
It was pretty hard to keep those.
A lot of fun when you're 8 and 9.
Pretty hard to keep those things straight. Well, I just had a bit of string or rope to guide the pivoting front wheels.
Yep.
And very tricky to steer. I reckon a lot of good Formula One drivers probably started in billy carts.
Well, I don't know. The cross bit that you steered with was usually held in place, 2 big splintery bits of timber by just a 4-inch nail. We'd never heard of the proper universal joint or anything.
Jim Haynes, Australiana, this week. What kids did before OH&S? A lot, actually. 25-1. Not a lot of time left, but a huge amount of feedback, Jim. On the line, we've got Brian with another story. G'day, Brian. Billy carts, Brian, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, that's right. Obviously, I was born in 47, so around 1960, 61, every Saturday, Channel 9 used to have a live billy cart race on TV, and I used to go there. You know, the steep hills there, all the driveways and that.
Yeah. Around Willoughby.
We used to start up the top with no helmets and just go.
Yeah, terrific. I was just saying to Bill off air about the fact that the Billy Cart Championships at Corowa no longer exist, although there is another one down in Victoria called the Bush Billy Carts, and they managed to get insurance. Harrow, a little town called Harrow near Edenvale in the West Wimmera, and they managed to run their Harrow National Bush Billy Cart Championships, but they had to get an insurer on board who was willing to cover them, and the other one's gone out of existence now. Imagine getting insurance for going down the hills at Willoughby these days.
Oh, unbelievable. Brian, thank you very much for your memories, mate. And look, some of the Muck Up Day stories we've got earlier kind of tie into this. Froggy Lou says, my daughter's exclusive Lower North Shore School some 20 years ago, this is not going back as far as we are, of course, but I brought her horse to Muck Up Day. It was walked in the grounds. School admin was not happy, but was appreciated by the other girls. Thank you, Froggy Lou, for that memory. Not quite as far back as we're talking, because they did have OH&S 20 years ago. Cracker night, says Dave, the bus driver. Best part, going out the next morning and picking up the ones that didn't go off.
Fizzers. Yeah, you could break them. If the wick was burned right down and they were bungers, you could break them in half and light the middle and just have a little, a pretty little, we used to call them fizzers. But John Williamson had the great song about Cracker Night. Remember, Cracker Night was a real big deal.
That's
when
right.
I was a little kid. Started letting them off after dark. We ran inside and hid, and all the dogs from everywhere were underneath the bed.
Slug guns. Slug gun, says Rob. You can get them in Kmart, he said. Mum wouldn't let me buy one. Lots of stories about marbles. As a primary school teacher, our school had to ban them because the kids couldn't flick the marbles. They had no patience to learn how to either. They also thought flicking was boring. Instead, they threw them, causing slithers of glass to fly in all directions.
Wow.
Slithers of glass. That's not easy to say.
No.
Rendering the playground unsafe. Thank you, Michael. I suppose OH&S does have a purpose. Joseph's on the line.
When marbles gets dangerous, I think it's time we had a good look at ourselves.
Michael puts a very good case there, Your Honour. Joseph, your story about growing up.
Yeah, we came out in 1968 from England, 10-pound poms, and we were first stopped as a caravan park out at Great Western Highway near Blacktown. We were just poor caravan park kids, and a shout out to all those other caravan park kids up there. But
I lived in one for 2 years. Yep, carry on.
We loved the trip to the tip. Dad would sometimes, go to throw a bit of rubbish off at the tip, local tip. We begged to go with him. We would, and you'd find bike parts. And I found an old red first metal scooter once, and it was the best toy I've ever had.
Yep.
That was a thrill, going to the tip.
Oh, yeah, foraging for bike bits to build stuff. Yeah, it was great at the tip.
Funny aside, Bill, up at Lightning Ridge, which is a town unlike any other in the world, where things are all jerry-made, the local tip is called Bunnings. They say that's where you get all your hardware.
Very good point, Joseph. I don't know, I guess for a very good reason, we have a lot of recycling and stuff now, so it probably wouldn't be as easy to source all that material, Joseph.
A lot of it's left on the side of the road these days. If you're handy with tools, you always see old bikes and frames and parts just left out for pickups,
Oh, the council clean-up thing. Yes. Which, again, that's something else councils, and I suppose with good reason, are cracking down on as well, because a lot of them are rummaged through and they make a hell of a mess. And councils are very strict about all that now.
Yeah, and there's only certain
Thanks
days.
for your call, Joseph. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Joseph. There are certain days when you can put things out, but you can have a special one. I actually noticed 2 days ago somebody put a bike out. I said to my wife, "There's a bike there," and she said, "Yeah, it's pretty rusty." But I noticed on my way to work this morning somebody's stolen the seat.
The seat.
The seat's gone.
They need a seat.
So
I remember someone stole one brick from a retaining wall once that I put out the front of our place. I thought, what? They must have just been a brick short. Anyway, sounds like you. Anyway, Paul says, "Do you remember?"
Brick short of a load.
Brick short of a load. Yeah, I was just thinking. Paul says, "Cracker night." It bounced on me. Here we are. Slingshots is one Paul brought up. Now that's interesting because my dad made me my first slingshot back in the day. He cut the rubber part from an old inner tube.
Yes.
And tied it to a nice V-shaped piece of timber that he cut from a bit of wood, a bit of tree somewhere.
Yep.
And that was my first slingshot, and I made a number of them after that, and they were always a lot better than the ones you could buy in the shops.
You can make them from a coat hanger.
Yes,
but I'm not advocating that, and I'm not going to put it up on Facebook how to do it either. So, but you can, and we call them Shanghais.
That's right, Shanghais.
Shanghais. Yeah.
I don't know where that comes from, but anyway. This from Linda, OH&S in the playground, the stainless steel slippery dip in a hot summer sun. That's a good point, Linda. You'd have a certainly seriously burnt bum if you weren't careful. Where I came from, the summers were very hot. Thank you very much from Margaret and a number of other people too for your very kind words. That's very nice of you. I won't read those out, but I will pop up somewhere like a bad smell somewhere else on the network at some stage. Now, no bike helmets, says Dave. Quite right. And where are we? Get a few others in here from Claire. One comment read banned things. Cocky Laura, 1, 2, 3 was the best. The slip and slide. How about banning bark chips at the bottom of the slippery dip? Have they done that?
I don't know, have they?
Claire says, what smart person thought of that? I didn't realise they'd banned the old bark chips. What could go wrong?
I don't know. It was just sand when we were kids. I don't know if they have sand still. They've got that other special stuff that's made of recycling rubbery.
Yeah, the rubbery thing, which is pretty good.
We had sand, which was served for the base of the slippery dip and also for the local cat's toilet most of the time. And it was good because if the slippery dip wasn't slippery, you chuck the sand on it, and that really helped.
What about seeing as you'd go on the swings as high as you could possibly go until you actually fell out?
Yes.
Right up. That was the thing. Yeah. Whoever could go the highest until the point where you were not only you're almost starting to go upside down,
right,
and you then slip out of the seat because there was nothing to hold you in it.
Yeah, and of course the great thing about swings was that there was always some new parent who pushed the child heavily and they got it whacked in the head when it came all the way back. They forgot that it came back.
But they still have swings. Yep. There you go. There are still swings.
Yep.
Anyway, Jack's on the line with a story. G'day, Jack.
How you going? Look, I'm still alive at 60 odd, and me and my brothers, and there's about 8 of us kids in a little country town in Tassie, and we are from the age of about 5 up to about 11. We come up with this bright idea to go to the tip. We found an old water tank, and we took us 3 days to push it to the top of this hill in this big paddock. And then we decided we're going to climb inside it and roll down to see what it was like.
Oh, no.
So we went back home the night before and prepared, and we had to pinch our mum's cushions, and we got masking tape and had it wrapped around our heads for a bit of protection. And then we all climbed in, about 8 of us, and pushed this thing, rocked it until it fell off, and we rolled down the hill. There's passed a bit of spark off us. We all survived. So I used to tell my son that, and my wife would say, "Shut up, stop telling me."
I know. That is a very familiar conversation, I think, of a certain generation, Jack, around the nation, where you start telling these stories to your wife, or vice versa, says, "Hey, what's for dinner?" Thank you. That's a good point. Thank you, Jack. That is true. I'm in my 80s now, says Barb. I can relate to all Jim Haynes memories. We had a lot of fun. This one from Steve. I unfortunately had one of the parachute firecrackers blow up in my face when I was a kid, lost my eyebrows and half my hair, and the eyesight in one of my eyes wasn't that good. I learnt my lesson that night as my dad told me never to light it myself. I snuck off, lit it, and as I went to check it, that it was lit, I put my face over it, and then bang. I can laugh at it now as I had to go to school with no eyebrows and half my hair. Still wants to bring back Cracker Night. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, Cracker Night was dangerous. There was a bunger called a Double Happy. It was the biggest one. It was about the size of your little finger, and they came in a string, and we used to unknot the strings, and I shouldn't say this, we used to throw them at one another, like that we can throw them, and I was trying to throw one at a mate who was dodging and weaving and running, and I had it up ready to throw next to my ear, and I wear hearing aids now.
There you go. Dave talks about British Bulldog, or Cocky Law, as some people talk. Starts with about 50 kids and one in the middle, and finishes up with 49 in the middle and one left. That was always the epic moment of the day, and if you could get it in before recess finished or lunch finished, you're doing very well.
And it had regional names, French and English, British Bulldog, Red Rover Crossover, Cocky Laura and Cocky Lawler. So it depended where you lived. You had your own generic or not generic name, your own local name for British Bulldog.